Welcome to Management 2110's Chapter 16 lecture, based on the readings from the textbook Management, 14th edition by Robbins and Coulter. So we're going to get started. So first we'll cover the learning objectives for Chapter 16. We're going to define motivation. Then we're going to compare and contrast early theories of motivation. We're going to compare and contrast contemporary theories of motivation. And we're going to develop your skills at motivating employees. And we're going to discuss current issues in motivation. And we're going to know how to identify what motivates you. So what is motivation? Motivation refers to the process by which a person's efforts are energized, directed, and sustained towards attaining a goal. Now, this definition has three key elements. That's the energy, direction, and persistence. The energy element is a measure of intensity, drive, and vigor. A motivated person puts forth effort and works hard. However, the quality of the effort must be considered as well as its intensity. High levels of effort don't necessarily lead to favorable job performance unless the effort is channeled in a direction that benefits the organization. Now, effort directed toward and consistent with organizational goals is the kind of effort we want from employees. And finally, motivation includes a persistence dimension. We want employees to persist in putting forth effort to achieve those goals. So the best known theory of motivation is probably Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. Maslow was a psychologist who proposed that within every person is a hierarchy of 5 needs. And Maslow argued that each level in the needs hierarchy must be substantially satisfied before the next need becomes dominant. An individual moves up the needs hierarchy from one level to the next. So, again, Maslow's theory that human needs are physiological, safety, social, esteem, and self-actualization, and they form a sort of a hierarchy, as I just explained. So Exhibit 16-1 here shows the 5 levels of needs in Maslow's hierarchy theory. And at the very bottom is your basic, your physiological needs, food, water, shelter. Then you have your safety needs, safety to feel safe. Individuals, before they go on to the social needs, they need to have those safety needs met. Social, that need for belongingness. You have esteem is the next one. And then your self-actualization. So those physiological needs, it's a person's needs for food, drink, shelter, sex, and other physical requirements. And then you have your safety needs, and that's a person's need for security and protection from physical and emotional harm, as well as assurance that physical needs will continue to be met. And then you have your social needs, and that's a person's need for affiliation, or as I said earlier, belongingness, acceptance, and friendship. So the esteem needs, and that's a person's need for internal esteem factors such as self-respect, autonomy, and achievement, and external esteem factors such as status, recognition, and attention. And then finally you have your self-actualization needs, and that's a person's need for growth, achieving one's potential, and self-fulfillment, the drive to become what one is capable of becoming, which is why it's at the top of the hierarchy. So Douglas McGregor is best known for proposing 2 assumptions about human nature, the theory X and theory Y. Now, very simply, theory X is a negative view of people that assumes workers have little ambition, They dislike work and they want to avoid responsibility, and they need to be closely controlled to work effectively. Then you have theory Y, and that is a positive view that assumes employees enjoy work, seek out and accept responsibility, and exercise self-direction. Now, McGregor believed that the theory Y assumption should guide management practice and proposed that participation in decision-making, responsible and challenging jobs, and group relations would maximize employee motivation. And then you have Frederick Herzberg's two-factor theory. It's also called motivation hygiene theory. Proposes that intrinsic factors are related to job satisfaction, while extrinsic factors are associated with job dissatisfaction. So Herzberg wanted to know when people felt exceptionally good, satisfied, or bad, being dissatisfied about their jobs. And these findings are illustrated in Exhibit 16-2 on our next slide. He concluded that the replies people gave when they felt good about their jobs were significantly different from the replies they gave when they felt badly. Certain characteristics were consistently related to job satisfaction, factors on the left side of the next slide, and the others to job dissatisfaction, which are factors on the right side of this next slide. So here we have the motivators being achievement, recognition, the actual work itself, responsibility, advancement, and growth. And the hygiene factors that are associated. We have, supervision, company policy, relationship with supervisor, working conditions, the salary, relationship with peers, personal life, relationship with subordinates, status, and security. Those are the hygiene factors. So the extrinsic factors that create job dissatisfaction are called hygiene factors. When these factors are adequate, people won't be dissatisfied, but they won't be satisfied or motivated either. Now, to motivate people, Herzberg suggested emphasizing motivators, the intrinsic factors having to do with the job itself. And because individuals want to be accepted by groups to which they belong, they're susceptible to pressures to conform. But conformity can go too far, especially when an individual's opinion differs significantly from that of others in the group. Now, in such a case, the group often exerts intense pressure on the individual to align his or her opinion to conform to others' opinions. A phenomenon known as groupthink. Now, we discussed groupthink in previous chapters. Groupthink seems to occur when group members hold a positive group image they want to protect, and when the group perceives a collective threat to this positive image. So again, we have the hygiene factors here we're going to go back to, and those are the factors that eliminate job dissatisfaction, but they also won't motivate. And then you have motivators, and those are factors that increase job satisfaction and motivation. So Herzberg believed the data suggested that the opposite of satisfaction was not dissatisfaction, as traditionally had been believed. Removing dissatisfying characteristics from a job would not necessarily make the job more satisfying or motivating. As illustrated here in Exhibit 16-3, Herzberg proposed that a dual continuum existed, and that is the opposite of satisfaction is no satisfaction, and the opposite of dissatisfaction is no dissatisfaction. Now, David McClelland and his associates proposed the three needs theory, which says three acquired, not innate needs are major motives in work. Now, these three needs include the need for achievement, the drive to succeed and excel in relation to a set of standards, the need for power, the need to make others behave in a way they would not behave otherwise, and the need for affiliation, the desire for friendly and close interpersonal relationships, if you will. Now, people with a high need for achievement are striving for personal achievement rather than for trappings and rewards of success. They have a desire to do something better or more efficiently than it's been done before. And the other two needs in this theory haven't been researched as extensively as the need for achievement. However, we do know that the best managers tend to be high in the need for power and low in the need for affiliation. So the need for power is the need to make others behave in a way they would not have behaved otherwise. And the need for affiliation is the desire for friendly and close interpersonal relationships. So all three of these needs can be best measured by using a projective test known as the thematic apperception test, or the TAT, in which respondents react to a set of pictures. Each picture is briefly shown to a person who writes a story based on the picture. Now we're going to look at Exhibit 16-4 here for some examples. And remember, trained interpreters then determine the individual's level of NACH, or NPOW, and NAFF from the stories written. Now, as you see here in the illustration, the NACH indicated by someone in the story wanting to perform or do something better. Again, the NAFF indicated that someone in the story wanting to be with someone else and enjoy mutual friendship. And the lowercase n, capital POW, indicated by someone in the story desiring to have an impact or make an impression on others in the story. So research provides substantial support for the goal-setting theory, which says that specific goals increase performance and that difficult goals, when accepted, result in higher performance than do easy goals. Now, self-efficacy refers to an individual's belief that he or she is capable of performing a task. The higher your self-efficacy, the more confidence you have in your ability to succeed in a task. So in difficult situations, we find that people with low self-efficacy are likely to reduce their effort or give up altogether, whereas those with high self-efficacy will try harder to master the challenge. So remember, goal-setting theory is the proposition that specific goals increase performance and that difficult goals, when accepted, result in higher performance than do easy goals. And that self-efficacy is an individual's belief that he or she is capable of performing a task. Now, Exhibit 16-5 here summarizes the relationships among goals, motivation, and performance. One overall conclusion is that the intention to work towards hard and specific goals is a powerful motivating force. Under the proper conditions, it can lead to higher performance. However, no evidence indicates that such goals are associated with increased job satisfaction. The reinforcement theory says that behavior is a function of its consequences. Those consequences that immediately follow a behavior and increase the probability that the behavior will be repeated are called reinforcers. Now, the reinforcement theory ignores factors such as goals, expectations, and needs. Instead, it focuses solely on what happens to a person when he or she does something. So remember, reinforcement theory is the theory that behavior is a function of its consequences. Reinforcers are consequences immediately following a behavior, which increase the probability that the behavior will be repeated. Now, because managers want to motivate individuals on the job, we need to look at ways to design motivating jobs. Now, we use the term job design to refer to the way tasks are combined to form complete jobs. The jobs people perform in an organization should not evolve by chance. Managers should design jobs deliberately and thoughtfully to reflect the demands of the changing environment, the organization's technology, and employees' skills, abilities, and preferences. An early effort at overcoming the drawbacks of job specialization involved horizontally expanding a job through increasing job scope. Now, the number of different tasks required in a job and the frequency in which these tasks are repeated. For instance, a dental hygienist job could be enlarged so that in addition to cleaning teeth, he or she is pulling patients' files, refiling them when finished, and sanitizing and storing instruments. Now, this type of job design option is called job enlargement. Okay, so we have job design being the way tasks are combined to form complete jobs. Job scope, the number of different tasks required in a job, and the frequency in which those tasks are repeated. And then you have job enlargement, and that's the horizontal expansion of a job by increasing job scope. So another approach to job design is a vertical expansion of a job by adding planning and evaluating responsibilities. That's job enrichment. Job enrichment increases job depth, which is a degree of control employees have over their work. In other words, employees are empowered to assume some of the tasks typically done by their managers. Thus, an enriched job allows workers to do an activity, the entire activity, with increased freedom, independence, and responsibility. Now, even though many organizations implemented job enlargement and job enrichment programs and experienced mixed results, neither approach provided an effective framework for managers to design motivating jobs. But the job characteristics model, the JCM, does. It identifies 5 core job dimensions, their inner relationships, and their impact on employee productivity, motivation, and satisfaction. And here, I'm going to go through it again. Job enrichment is the vertical expansion of a job by adding, planning, and evaluating responsibilities. Job depth is the degree of control employees have over their work. And job characteristics model, the JCM, a framework for analyzing and designing jobs that identifies 5 primary core job dimensions, their interrelationships, and their impact on outcomes. Now, Exhibit 16-6 here shows the JCM. There on the left, you have your core job dimensions. In the center, you have your critical psychological states. And then over to the right, you have your personal and work outcomes. So these 5 core dimensions we mentioned are skill variety, and that's the degree to which the job requires a variety of activities so that employees can use a number of different skills and talents. We have task identity, and that's the degree to which A job requires completion of a whole and identifiable piece of work. And then finally we have, on this slide, we have task significance, and that's the degree to which a job has a substantial impact on the lives or work of other people. Now moving on to 4, that's autonomy, and that's the degree to which a job provides substantial freedom, independence, and discretion to the individual in scheduling the work and determining the procedures to be used in carrying it out. And then finally, feedback, and that's the degree to which doing work activities required by a job results in an individual obtaining direct and clear information about the effectiveness of his or her performance. So, 2 emerging viewpoints on job design are causing a rethink of the JCM and other standard approaches. So, let's take a look at each perspective. So, the first perspective, and that's the relational perspective of work designs, focuses on how people's tasks and jobs are increasingly based on social relationships. In jobs today, employees have more interactions and interdependence with coworkers and others, both inside and outside the organization. In doing their job, employees rely more and more on those around them for information, advice, and assistance. So what does this mean for designing motivating jobs? It means that managers need to look at important components of those employees' relationships, such as access to and the level of social support in the organization, types of interactions outside an organization, and amount of task interdependence and interpersonal feedback. And the second perspective, and that's the proactive perspective of work design, says that employees are taking the initiative to change how their work is performed. They're much more involved in decisions and actions that affect their work. Important job design factors according to this perspective include autonomy, which is part of the JCM, the amount of ambiguity and accountability, job complexity, level of stressors, and social or relationship context. Now, each of these has been shown to influence employee proactive behavior. Now, one stream of research that's relevant to proactive work design is high involvement work practices, which are designed to elicit greater input or involvement from workers. Now, the level of employee proactivity is believed to increase as employees become more involved in decisions that affect their work. Now, another term for this approach, which we had discussed in earlier chapters, is employee empowerment. So again, high involvement work practices or work practices designed to elicit greater input or involvement from workers. So the equity theory is developed by J. Stacy Adams, and that proposes that employees compare what they get from a job, being outcomes, in relation to what they put into it, being the inputs. And then they compare their inputs and outcomes ratio with the inputs outcomes ratios of relevant others. Okay, with this going to be illustrated here in the next page. If an employee perceives her ratio to be equitable in comparison to those of relevant others, there's no problem. However, if the ratio is inequitable, she views herself as under-rewarded or over-rewarded. So when inequities occur, employees attempt to do something about it, and the result might be lower or higher productivity, improved or reduced quality of output, increased absenteeism, or voluntary resignation. So again, equity theory, the theory that an employee compares his or her job's input to output ratio, input to outcome ratio with that of relevant others, and then corrects any inequity. So the reference, that's persons, systems, or selves against which individuals compare themselves to assess equity. So that's the reference, or reference. The distributive justice, originally the equity theory focused on distributive justice, which is the perceived fairness of the amount of allocation of rewards among individuals. So more recent research has focused on looking at these issues of procedural justice, the perceived fairness of the process used to determine the distribution of rewards. And research shows that the distributive justice has a greater influence on employee satisfaction than procedural justice, while procedural justice tends to affect an employee's organizational commitment, trust in his or her boss, and intention to quit. So again, we're going to look at the reference, the person, systems, or selves against which individuals compare themselves to assess equity. Then you have the distributive justice, that's the perceived fairness of the amount and allocation of rewards among individuals. And then you have procedural justice, and that's the perceived fairness of the process used to determine the distribution of awards or rewards. And exhibit 16-7 here illustrates the equity theory. Now, the most comprehensive explanation of how employees are motivated is Victor Vroom's expectancy theory. The expectancy theory states that an individual tends to act in a certain way based on the expectation that the acts will be followed by a given outcome and on the attractiveness of that outcome to the individual. It included 3 variables or relationships, and they will be exhibited in 16-8 here. And here we have exhibit 16-8, which illustrates the 3 relationships in the expectancy model. You have individual effort to individual performance. You have performance to reward linkage, and then you have attractiveness of the reward. So the expectancy or effort performance linkage is the probability perceived by the individual that exerting a given amount of effort will lead to a certain level of performance. Now, instrumentally or performance reward linkage is to the degree to which the individual believes that performing at a particular level is instrumental in attaining the desired outcome. And then you have valence or attractiveness of reward, and that is the importance an individual places on the potential outcome or reward that can be achieved on the job. Now, valence considers both the goals and the needs of the individual. So the expectancy or effort performance linkage is probably perceived by the individual that exerting a given amount of effort will lead to a certain level of performance. Now, instrumentally or performance reward linkage is the degree to which the individual believes that performing a particular level is instrumental in attaining or the desired outcome. Okay, and the valence or attractiveness of reward is the importance an individual places on the potential outcome or reward that can be achieved on the job. Valence considers both the goals and the needs of the individual. So Exhibit 16-9 here presents a model that integrates much of what we know about motivation. In today's global business environment, managers can't automatically assume motivational programs that work in one geographic location are going to work in others. Most current motivation theories were developed in the United States by Americans and about Americans. So maybe the most blatant pro-American characteristic in these theories is the strong emphasis on individualism and achievement. For instance, both goal setting and expectancy theories emphasize goal achievement as well as rational and individual thought. Now, employees come into organizations with different needs, personalities, skills, abilities, interests, and aptitudes. They have different expectations of their employers and different views of what they think their employer has a right to expect of them. And then they vary widely in what they want from their jobs. Now, to maximize motivation among today's workforce, managers need to think in terms of flexibility. Now, for instance, studies tell us that men place more importance on having autonomy in their jobs than women. In contrast, the opportunity to learn, convenient and flexible work hours, and good interpersonal relations are more important to women. And many organizations have developed flexible work arrangements, such as compressed compressed work weeks, flex time, and job sharing that recognize different needs. So what motivates professionals? Money and promotions typically are low on their priority list. And why is that? Well, they tend to be well paid and enjoy what they do. So in contrast, job challenge tends to be ranked high. They like to tackle problems and find solutions. Their chief reward is the work itself. And professionals also value support. Now, they want others to think that what they are working on is important. So that may be true for all employees, but professionals tend to be focused on their work as their central life interest, whereas non-professionals typically have other interests outside of work that can compensate for the needs not met on the job. So, what will motivate involuntarily temporary employees? An obvious answer is the opportunity to become a permanent employee. So in cases in which permanent employees are selected from a pool of temps, the temps will often work hard in hopes of becoming permanent. Now, a less obvious answer is the opportunity for training. The ability of a temporary employee is to find new job and are largely dependent on his or her skills. So the ability of a temporary employee to find a new job is largely dependent on his or her skills. So in motivating minimum wage employees, managers might look at employee recognition programs. So many managers also recognize the power of praise. Managers may also recognize the power of praise through these pats on the back. They must be sincere and given for the right reasons. So many organizations of various sizes involve their employees in workplace decisions by opening up the financial statements or the books, and they share that information so employees will be motivated to make better decisions about their work and be able to understand the implications of what they do and how they do it, and the ultimate impact on the bottom line. This approach is called open book management, and many organizations are using it. So employee recognition programs consist of personal attention and expressing interest, approval, and appreciation for a job well done. And they can take numerous forms. Now, pay for performance programs are variable compensation plans that pay employees on the basis of some performance measure. So piece rate pay plans, wage incentive plans, profit sharing, and lump sum bonuses are just some examples. And what differentiates these forms of pay from more traditional compensation plans is that instead of paying employees for time on the job, the pay is adjusted to reflect some performance measure. So we're going to start our chapter review. In review of our first learning objective, remember that motivation is the process by which a person's efforts are energized, directed, and sustained towards attaining a goal. Also remember the energy element is a measure of intensity, drive, and vigor. The high level of effort needs to be directed in ways that help the organization achieve the goals. And employees must persist in putting forth the effort to achieving the goal. In review of our second learning objective in Maslow's hierarchy, individuals move up the hierarchy of 5 needs, being physiological, safety, social, esteem, and self-actualization. And as needs are substantially satisfied, a need that's substantially satisfied no longer motivates. And a theory X manager believes that you don't like work or won't seek out responsibility, so they have to be threatened and coerced at work. A theory Y manager assumes people like work and seek out responsibility so that they can, they will exercise self-motivation and self-direction. And Herzberg theory proposed that intrinsic factors associated with job satisfaction were what motivated people. Extrinsic factors such as extrinsic factors associated with job dissatisfaction simply kept people from being dissatisfied. The 3 needs theory proposed 3 acquired needs that are major motives in work: the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, and the need for power. So in review of our third learning objective, goal setting theory says that specific goals increase performance, and difficult goals, when accepted, result in higher performance than easy goals. So important points in goal setting theory include intention to work towards a goal as a major source of job motivation, specific hard goals that produce higher levels of output than generalized goals, and participation in setting goals as preferred to assigning goals, but not always. Feedback that guides and motivates behavior, especially self-generated feedback, and contingencies that affect goal setting, goal commitment, self-efficacy, and national culture. The reinforcement theory says that behavior is a function of its consequences. To motivate, use positive reinforcers to reinforce desired behaviors. Just remember that the reinforcement theory says that behavior is a function of its consequences. To motivate, use positive reinforcers to reinforce desired behaviors, ignore undesirable behavior rather than punishing it. Also remember that job enlargement involves horizontally expanding job scope by adding more tasks or increasing how many times the tasks are done. Now moving on to our fourth learning objective. Oh, you know what? Going back to this, I want to finish up some of these bullets with, remember that job enrichment vertically expands job depth by giving employees more control over their work. Also remember, job characteristics model says that there are 5 core job dimensions, being skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy, and feedback. They're used to design motivating jobs. And another job design approach proposed looking at relational aspects and proactive aspects of the job. Now remember that the equity theory focuses on how employees compare their inputs to outcomes ratios to relevant others ratios. A perception of inequity will cause an employee to do something about it. Procedural justice has a greater influence on employee satisfaction than distributed justice. And that the expectancy theory says that an individual tends to act in a certain way based on the expectation that the act will be followed by a desired outcome. Also, the expectancy is the effort performance linkage. How much effort do I need to exert to achieve a certain level of performance? Instrumentally is the performance reward linkage. That's achieving at a certain level of performance will get me a specific reward, and balance is the attractiveness of the award. And that means, is the award, is it the reward that I want? The relevance has huge impact. So, in review of our fourth learning objective, managers must cope with 3 current motivation issues: managing cross-cultural challenges, motivating unique groups of workers, and designing appropriate reward programs. Most motivational theories were developed in the United States and have a North American bias. Now, some theories, Maslow's hierarchy, achievement need, and equity theory, don't work well for other cultures. However, the desire for interesting work seems important to all workers, and Herzberg's motivator intrinsic factors may be universal. And managers face challenges in motivating unique groups of workers. A diverse workforce is looking for flexibility. Now, professionals want job challenge and support and are motivated by the work itself. Contingent workers want the opportunity to become permanent or to use skills training. Recognition programs and sincere appreciation for work done can be used to motivate low-skilled minimum wage workers. And the open book management is when financial statements, meaning the books, are shared with employees who have been taught what they mean. Employee recognition programs consist of personal attention, approval, and appreciation for a job well done. Pay for performance programs are variable compensation plans that pay employees on the basis of some performance measure. So thank you for your participation in the Chapter 16 lecture. Stay tuned for the Chapter 17 lecture. Until then, check Blackboard for the week's activities and assignments.